Psalms 91:2. He is my refuge and my fortress, okay? All right. The one who lives intimately with God knows the greatness of his protection. God himself becomes like a mighty refuge and fortress for the believer. My fortress. Have you ever said definitely, oh Lord, thou art my refuge? Not just in case I need you. Fleeing from all others, have you sheltered in him from the windy storms and tempests, from the harrow by day and the pestilence by night? From man and devil, you must allow it. Do not only think it, but say it. That quote came from a guy by the name of Meyer, all right? As my daughter told you, I love to read, all right? My God, in him I will trust. This close relationship with God and all the benefits that come from it are from those who know Jesus Christ as God. Meaning you're not trusting in your own money and your own know-how, all right? Who trust totally in him. And as a believer receives his protection, comfort, and care. He trusts God all the more and increasingly know him as God. We know him as God and not the genie of the lamp, and you hoping that you can rub God the right way. How's that? All right, 2 Corinthians 12:9. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. So now this is the writer, Mr. Paul. Sorry, y'all, I got to teach just a little bit. But God had a response from Paul. And the answer was not what Paul initially hoped for or expected. But God still had a response for Paul. And we often close our ears to God if he responds in a way we did not hope for or expect. Some of y'all got that "it's my way" attitude, all right? So again, all right, it's not your way, it's God's way, and no, it's not your prerogative either. How's that? So instead of removing the thorn from Paul's life, God gave and would keep giving him grace to Paul. And the grace God gave Paul was sufficient to meet his every need, okay? See, Paul was desperate in his desire to find relief from his burden, but there are two ways of relief. It can come by removing the load or by strengthening the shoulder that bears the load. Instead of taking away the thorn, God strengthened Paul under it, and God would show his strength through Paul's apparent weakness. So again, all right, don't confuse it, all right? You know, meekness is not a sign of weakness, and there's nothing wrong with knowing what your weaknesses are itself. See, to do this, Paul had to believe that God's grace is sufficient. We really don't believe God's grace is sufficient until we believe we are insufficient. Some of y'all have a superiority complex. You think that you got it on. You think that you are all that and a bag of chips. But again, I literally need to tell you, but that is not true. For many of us, especially in American culture, this is a huge obstacle. We are the people who idolize the self-made man or woman and want to rely on ourselves. Well, I guess you didn't see the stock market when it crashed and folks jumped out the windows. How about the early 2000s when folks lost their homes? I'm just saying, okay? But we can receive God's strength until we know. We can't receive God's strength until we know our weaknesses. We can't receive the sufficiency of God's grace until we know our own insufficiency. Some of us are insufficient, and we're trying to hide it. There was a writer by the name of Spurgeon, and he said it this way, and I quote, "Great tribulation brings out the great strength of God. If you never feel inward conflicts and sinking of soul, you do not know much of the upholding power of God. But if you go down, down into the depths of soul language, till the death threatens to shut her mouth upon you, and then the Lord rises upon a cherubim and does fly. Yea, rides upon the wings of the wind and delivers your soul and catches you away to the third heaven of delight. Then you perceive the majesty of divine grace. Oh, there must be the weakness of man felt, recognized, and mourned over, or else the strength of the Son of God will never be perfect in us." See, some of us want to be totally perfect, all right? Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This refers to Paul's ability to be content in all things. To achieve this contentment, he needed the strength of Jesus Christ. Unfortunately,